Grandpa asked, confused. Why are you arriving in an Uber? What happened to the SUV we bought you for your 24th birthday? Before I could even respond, my mom smiled and said, her sister needed it more. The room went silent, then Grandpa did something none of us saw coming. Grandpa Walter's voice, sharp as glass shattering on marble, cleaved through the festive birthday chatter. Natalie, where's your vehicle? The opulent dining room fell into an immediate, suffocating silence. 23 pairs of eyes, a dizzying gauntlet, swiveled first to me, then in unison, tracked the sleek Uber pulling away from the curb of his sprawling estate. My fingers, now clammy, tightened instinctively around the precious gift I'd brought, a first-edition Hemingway, a treasure I'd scrimped and saved 3 months just to afford. Mom, ever the master of social choreography, glided forward, her champagne glass catching a brilliant shard of light from the chandelier. Oh, Dad, she purred. Olivia needed reliable transportation for the twins. You know how children require safety. Across the room, my younger sister Olivia, for years my junior, offered a saccharine smile from beside her husband, Carter. My gaze snagged on the diamond bracelet adorning her wrist, the very one I'd admired last Christmas, the one I'd casually pointed out during a shopping trip, only for it to materialize on her arm just 3 days later. Grandpa's weathered face, usually a map of warm smiles, transformed into something utterly unfamiliar, a mask of rigid fury. His jaw set like concrete. This was his 79th birthday, and the festive air had curdled into a palpable dread. Helen, his voice, cold enough to freeze lava, cut deep. Are you telling me you allowed Natalie to surrender the Range Rover we specifically purchased for her birthday? The one with the safety features I researched for 6 weeks? Mom stammered. Well, I didn't exactly. But he steamrolled over her, his voice dropping to a low, dangerous register that made everyone involuntarily lean forward. Natalie needed it more because she has children. Is that the statement you're making? I wish the ornate Persian rug beneath my feet would swallow me whole. This wasn't how I'd ever imagined confessing the truth to him. Olivia, sensing the tension, detached herself from Carter and glided towards Grandpa, her hand resting delicately on her husband's arm. Grandpa, honestly, Natalie was so generous about it. She practically insisted, and with Sophie and Dylan needing to get to different schools and activities, the logistics were becoming impossible. The lie, delivered with such practiced ease, almost made me believe it myself. Almost. Just 3 months ago, I'd arrived home from my job at the architectural firm to an empty driveway. That evening, Mom had called not to ask, but to inform me she transferred the title to Olivia. Family sacrifices for family, she'd declared, as if that neatly explained everything. When I tried to explain my need for the vehicle, hauling design materials to client sites, Mom had blithely suggested adjusting my schedule to public transportation. When I reminded her the Range Rover was a gift to me, she'd laughed. Don't be selfish. Your sister has 2 children. Grandpa turned his gaze to me. His eyes, usually warm as summer afternoons, now held something sharp, assessing. Natalie, did you volunteer your vehicle? The room held its breath, a collective gasp suspended in the air. My voice caught in my throat. Years of being told to keep the peace, to be the bigger person, to understand Olivia needed more support, weighed my tongue down like lead. Answer me honestly, Grandpa commanded. No, sir. I didn't. The words hung in the air, thick and acrid, like smoke after a gunshot. Mom's face flushed a furious crimson. Natalie, how dare you embarrass your sister like this in front of the entire family? Helen, be quiet. Grandpa's command was soft, yet absolute. Natalie, explain what happened. So I did. The whole sordid story tumbled out. How I'd returned from work to an empty driveway. How the title had been transferred without my signature, Mom using my old passport information, forging the documents. How I'd been using ride shares for 3 months, watching my temporary gift ferry Olivia to yoga classes and brunch dates. When I finished, Grandpa nodded slowly. Then, he turned to my grandmother, Anna, who had been watching from her armchair with an expression I couldn't decipher. Anna, would you bring me the Sanderson file from my study? Top drawer, left side. Grandma stood immediately, her movements suggesting she'd been expecting this very request. Olivia let out a nervous, brittle laugh. Grandpa, this is ridiculous. It's just a car. Natalie doesn't even need it. She lives near the metro. Grandpa's eyebrow arched, a subtle yet devastating gesture. The metro that adds 90 minutes to her commute each way? He pressed. The metro that forced her to decline the Morrison project because she couldn't transport materials? My stomach dropped. How did he know about Morrison? Grandma returned, a worn leather folder clutched in her hands. Grandpa opened it, scanned a page, then looked at Mom with an expression usually reserved for business adversaries. Helen, I'm curious about something. The Range Rover was titled in Natalie's name exclusively. How did you execute a title transfer? Mom's manufactured confidence wavered visibly. I had her identification information from when I helped her renew her passport. So you committed fraud? Grandpa's words landed like anvils. I'm her mother. I made a family decision. You made a theft decision, Grandpa corrected, closing the folder with a snap. The vehicle was Natalie's property. You stole it, forged documents to transfer ownership, and then gaslit her into believing she was selfish for objecting. Carter finally spoke up, a touch of desperation in his voice. With respect, sir, families should support each other. Olivia has children who require Carter. Grandpa interrupted, his voice laced with menace. Unless you'd like me to discuss why your consulting business has received $50,000 in loans from Helen over the past year, I suggest silence. The color drained from Carter's face. $50,000? I looked at Mom, whose expression had moved beyond embarrassment into something approaching naked panic. Dad, that's private financial. Nothing is private when you're stealing from one daughter to subsidize another's lifestyle. Grandpa opened the folder again. Did you think I wouldn't notice? Anna and I have been watching this pattern for 18 months. 18 months. My mind raced backward. The laptop that broke right before Olivia needed one for her online boutique. The security deposit I'd loaned Mom that somehow became Olivia's down payment for a leased BMW. The bridesmaid dress I'd purchased for Olivia's second wedding that cost more than my monthly rent. This has been planned, I whispered, a dawning horror spreading through me. Grandma nodded gently. We suspected, but we needed confirmation. Grandpa stood, and despite his 78 years, he commanded the room effortlessly. Here's what's going to happen. First, Olivia will return the Range Rover to Natalie immediately, with a signed apology acknowledging the vehicle was taken without permission. But the twins, Olivia started. The twins can ride in the BMW Carter leased last month. The one I've seen in your driveway. Grandpa didn't even glance at her. Second, Helen, you will repay Natalie for every expense she's incurred in the past 18 months due to your redistribution of her resources. I have a comprehensive list. He withdrew several pages from the folder. My jaw dropped as I recognized my own handwriting, the meticulous budget spreadsheets I'd created to track expenses, the ones I'd left at their house months ago and assumed were long discarded. Grandma, I breathed, looking at her in shock. She smiled gently. I photographed them. You've always been meticulous. The spreadsheets detailed everything: $12,000 in loans that were never repaid, $8,500 in shared expenses that solely benefited Olivia, $3,200 in gifts I'd been guilted into providing. The total was staggering, $23,700. Helen, Grandpa's voice cut through the stunned silence. You have 60 days to repay that amount to Natalie, or I will recoup it from your inheritance advancement. Mom went pale. My what? Did you think the trust fund we established for you was unconditional? There are clauses regarding financial abuse of family members. You violated them spectacularly. Grandpa's expression could have cut diamonds. Anna and I have been funding your lifestyle for decades under the assumption you treat your daughters equitably. We were wrong. He turned to me, his gaze softening almost imperceptibly. Natalie, I apologize. We should have intervened sooner, but we needed absolute proof of the pattern. Grandma Anna has been documenting everything for months. The room spun slightly. All those times Grandma had asked about my job, my commute, my finances. She hadn't been making conversation. She'd been building a case. Olivia's face had transformed from smugness to genuine panic. Grandpa, please! We can't afford to give back the car. We need it. Then perhaps Carter should focus on building his consulting business instead of accepting handouts. Grandpa's gaze could have melted steel. Or perhaps you should sell the designer handbags I noticed in your closet during my last visit. The Birkin alone would cover several months of minivan payments. My Aunt Paula, Mom's sister, who'd been silent throughout the entire confrontation, suddenly spoke up, her voice trembling. Walter, I think you're being harsh. Helen made mistakes, but families should. Paula, you're the last person who should speak about family obligations. Grandpa swiveled towards her, his tone chillingly calm. Should I mention the $15,000 you borrowed from Helen last year? The loan that was actually meant for Natalie's graduate school fund. Aunt Paula's mouth opened and closed soundlessly. My graduate school fund. The one Mom said had been mismanaged by the bank. The fund I'd assumed was lost to bad investments. There never was a bank error, was there? I asked quietly, the realization a cold dread in my gut. Grandpa shook his head. Paula needed money for her vacation property. Helen raided your education fund without permission from the trust administrators. We discovered it during the annual audit. The betrayal crashed over me in waves. Not just Mom and Olivia, but Aunt Paula, too. How many family members had been complicit? Dad, who'd been standing by the window throughout this entire revelation, finally turned around. His face was gray. Natalie, I didn't know. I swear I didn't know about the education fund, but you knew about the car. I finished, my voice raw. His silence confirmed it. Grandpa nodded, as if this answered something. Marcus, you have 30 days to move your belongings from Helen's house. Anna and I are purchasing a condo for you downtown. The papers are already prepared. What? Mom shrieked, her voice cracking. You can't just… Helen, your husband has been sleeping in the guest room for 2 years because you've made his life miserable. He stays because he's afraid of losing access to his daughters. That ends today. Grandpa's voice softened as he addressed Dad. Marcus, the condo is yours. No strings attached. You deserve better than being an accessory to theft and manipulation. Dad's eyes welled up. Walter, I don't know what to say. Say you'll have dinner with us weekly so we can rebuild what Helen destroyed. Grandma Anna interjected gently. And perhaps bring Natalie. We've missed you both. The implication was clear. Olivia wasn't included in that invitation. Carter tried to salvage the situation, his voice strained. Mr. Sanderson, I think there's been a misunderstanding. When Helen transferred the vehicle, she told us Natalie had agreed. Did you ask Natalie directly? Grandpa interrupted. Carter's silence was damning. That's what I thought. Grandpa's disappointment was palpable. You didn't question whether stealing from your sister-in-law was appropriate because it benefited you. That's called complicity, Carter. I watched Carter's composure crumble. He'd always presented himself as the successful entrepreneur, the man who'd elevated Olivia's status. But standing there, under Grandpa's unyielding scrutiny, he looked small. There's more, Grandma Anna said, opening another section of the folder. Natalie, do you remember the freelance architectural project you completed last year? The residential redesign for the Patterson family? I nodded, confused by the relevance. Yes, that was a significant commission. And your fee? $22,000. I was saving it for… My voice died as realization struck. For the down payment on a condo. And where is that money now? Grandma's question was gentle, yet purposeful. My mind raced backward. I deposited the check, watched my account balance swell with pride. Then Mom had called about Olivia's emergency. Something about Sophie and Dylan needing medical procedures. I transferred $15,000 immediately, promised to send more after my next paycheck. Sophie and Dylan never had medical procedures, did they? I asked hollowly, my gaze fixed on Olivia. She looked away, refusing to meet my eyes. The money funded their vacation to Hawaii, Grandpa supplied, his voice flat. The trip they posted extensively on social media while you were eating ramen and taking extra freelance work to rebuild your savings. The room started spinning. I remembered those posts. Olivia's sun-soaked photos with captions about a blessed life and family adventures. I'd felt happy for her. Guilty that I couldn't contribute more to the twins' experiences. I'd been happy while she vacationed on my stolen money. How much total? I whispered, the words barely audible. How much have they taken? Grandpa consulted his papers. In the past 3 years, accounting for direct thefts, coerced loans, fraudulent transfers, and money given under false pretenses, approximately $67,000. The number hit me like a physical blow. $67,000. More than a year's salary at my firm. That's impossible, I breathed. It's meticulously documented, Grandma Anna assured me. Every transaction, every lie, every manipulation. We have bank statements, text messages, and witness testimony from family members who felt uncomfortable but remained silent. She gestured around the room, and several relatives wouldn't meet my eyes. Uncle Preston cleared his throat, his face flushed with shame. Natalie, I'm ashamed to say I borrowed $5,000 from you 2 Christmases ago. Helen told me you were flushed with cash and happy to help family. I had no idea that I was living paycheck to paycheck, I finished bitterly. That I'd given up vacations, delayed dental work, and turned down social invitations because I had no disposable income. Uncle Preston's face flushed even deeper. I'll pay you back with interest. I swear. Several family members will be making restitution, Grandpa confirmed. We've already had conversations. Everyone who knowingly or unknowingly benefited from Helen's redistribution scheme will contribute to making you whole. Mom finally exploded. This is insane. I'm her mother. Everything I did was to keep this family balanced. Natalie is capable and strong. She doesn't need coddling like Olivia does. Coddling? Dad's voice cracked through the room like thunder. Everyone turned to stare at him. He'd been quiet so long that his sudden volume was shocking. You call what you did to Olivia coddling, Helen? You've destroyed her. You've taught her that manipulation and theft are acceptable. You've ensured she has no life skills, no work ethic, and no moral compass. You didn't help Olivia. You crippled her. Mom reeled backward as if he'd struck her. Dad wasn't finished. And Natalie, our strong, capable Natalie, do you know what her therapist told me last month? Ice water filled my veins. Dad, don't. She has anxiety attacks in parking lots. Dad continued, his voice breaking. She has nightmares about being homeless. She's terrified to spend money on basic necessities because you've conditioned her to believe she's selfish for having needs. Our daughter requires medication because you've psychologically tortured her for years, and I let it happen because I was too afraid to stand up to you. The silence that followed was absolute. I'd never told Dad about therapy. Never mentioned the panic attacks or the Lexapro prescription, but apparently, he noticed more than I'd realized. Marcus. Mom's voice was small now, uncertain. I'm done, Helen. Completely done. Dad walked across the room and stood beside me. I should have protected both our daughters. Instead, I protected no one. But that ends now. Olivia was crying now, mascara running down her cheeks. This isn't fair. I have children. I need support. Then support yourself, Grandpa said without sympathy. Your children are 9 and 6 years old, both in school full-time. You're perfectly capable of employment. Carter is perfectly capable of earning money. Honestly, you've been coasting on your sister's sacrifices and your mother's enabling. That ends immediately. Aunt Paula, who tried to slip toward the exit, froze when Grandpa's gaze landed on her. Paula, stay. We're not finished with you. She turned slowly, her face ashen. The vacation property you purchased last year, Grandpa said conversationally. The one in Asheville. Lovely mountain views, I'm told. What did that cost? Around $300,000. Aunt Paula's lips pressed into a thin line. I don't see how that's relevant. It's relevant because you told Helen you needed $15,000 for emergency medical expenses. Multiple sclerosis treatment, wasn't it? Grandpa's expression could have frozen hell. Except you don't have MS, do you, Paula? You have a vacation home you wanted to furnish. The gasps around the room were audible. You used my daughter's education fund to buy furniture? Dad's voice was deadly quiet. Aunt Paula's hands trembled. I was going to pay it back. With what money? Grandma Anna challenged. You're 62, retired early, living on a fixed income. You have no means to repay $15,000, which means you committed fraud knowing you'd never face consequences. I felt numb. Aunt Paula had visited me in the hospital when I'd had appendicitis. She brought flowers and sat with me for hours. She called me her favorite niece and told me I could always count on family. All while she'd robbed my future. Here's what will happen, Grandpa said, his voice like steel wrapped in velvet. Paula, you will sell the Asheville property. You purchased it outright using stolen funds, so every penny from that sale will go to Natalie. Additionally, you will be removed from all family trusts and inheritance considerations. Your betrayal extends beyond theft. You manufactured a terminal illness to manipulate your sister. That's unforgivable. Walter, please! Aunt Paula's voice cracked. Leave my home now. Aunt Paula looked at Mom, desperate for support. But Mom had shrunk into herself, no longer the commanding matriarch, but a woman watching her world collapse. And Paula left without another word. The relatives remaining in the room shifted uncomfortably. I could see the calculations happening behind their eyes. Who else had benefited from Mom's schemes? Who else might face Grandpa's accounting? Cousin Jennifer approached me hesitantly. Natalie, I didn't borrow money, but I need to apologize anyway. Last Thanksgiving, Aunt Helen told me you couldn't make it because you were too busy with work. But you weren't invited at all, were you? I shook my head slowly. I'd spent that Thanksgiving alone in my apartment, believing Mom when she'd said the family gathering was cancelled due to Grandma Anna's cold. I'm so sorry, Jennifer whispered. I should have called you directly. I should have questioned why you'd miss family time. Other cousins began sharing similar stories. A birthday party I'd allegedly declined. A summer barbecue I'd supposedly been too tired to attend. Christmas Eve dinner where Mom claimed I'd chosen to work late. I hadn't been invited to any of them. She isolated you, Grandma Anna said softly, her voice filled with sorrow. Classic abuser behavior. She cut you off from family support systems so you'd have nowhere to turn when you needed help. The methodical cruelty of it staggered me. This wasn't impulsive favoritism. This was calculated psychological warfare. Why? The word burst from me, raw and desperate. Why would she do this? Grandpa and Grandma exchanged a long look. Finally, Grandpa spoke. Your mother has always struggled with a particular fear. The fear of being surpassed by her children. That's ridiculous, I protested weakly. Is it? Grandma Anna pulled out another document, a newspaper clipping from 15 years ago. This is from your high school graduation. You won the Presidential Scholar Award, the highest academic honor. Do you remember how your mother reacted? I remembered. She'd smiled for photos, but spent the car ride home complaining about the parking situation and how the ceremony ran too long. I'd assumed she was tired. Helen called me that night, Grandma continued. She was furious. Said the award made Olivia feel inadequate. Said it wasn't fair that you got recognition when Olivia tried hard, too. She wanted us to minimize your achievement at family gatherings. My chest tightened. Did you? Absolutely not. We were immensely proud, but Helen started a pattern that night, diminishing your successes while amplifying Olivia's mediocre efforts. Grandma's eyes were sad. We thought it was temporary jealousy, something she'd overcome. We didn't realize the extent of the problem until about 18 months ago when we started noticing financial irregularities. That's when we began documenting everything. Grandpa picked up the thread. When you got the Range Rover, Helen called it excessive and unfair to Olivia. Never mind that Olivia had received a car at the same age, a BMW that she totaled while texting and driving. Never mind that you'd never asked us for anything, while Olivia had a list of demands before every birthday. Mom convinced me I didn't deserve the SUV, I said slowly. She said I should be grateful but humble. That flaunting gifts was tacky. While Olivia posted photos of every gift she ever received, Dad added bitterly. Helen's double standards were Olympic level. Carter, who'd been silent during these revelations, suddenly stood. I'm leaving. Olivia, are you coming? Olivia looked between Carter and the rest of us, clearly torn. For a moment, I thought she might stay, might finally break from the toxic pattern. But she grabbed her purse and followed him to the door. Before leaving, she turned back. Natalie, you always acted like you were better than me, more responsible, more talented, more everything. Her voice was tight with a lingering resentment. Maybe Mom went too far, but you never tried to understand how hard it was being compared to you constantly. The accusation hung in the air. I never asked to be compared to you, I replied, my voice surprisingly steady. I never wanted competition. I wanted a sister. Olivia's face crumpled, but she didn't respond. She simply left, Carter's hand on her back, guiding her out of accountability and toward continued delusion. The door closed behind them with a decisive click. She'll be back, Grandpa predicted. When the money runs out and reality hits, she'll be back. Whether you let her in is entirely your choice. I nodded, too emotionally exhausted to consider that future. Grandma Anna stood and addressed the remaining family members. Let this be a lesson to all of you. Silence in the face of injustice is complicity. Comfort in the face of abuse is cowardice. If you see family members being mistreated and you say nothing, you're part of the problem. Several heads nodded. Some people looked ashamed. Others looked relieved, as though they'd been waiting years for someone to speak this truth. No, Grandma continued, her tone warming slightly. Those of you who genuinely care about making amends and rebuilding trust with Natalie, stay. We're going to have cake and celebrate Walter's birthday properly. Those who can't muster authentic support, there's the door. A few relatives left quickly, unable or unwilling to face the accountability, but most stayed. Uncle Preston approached with his wife, Sylvia. Natalie, I meant what I said earlier. I'll repay what I borrowed, and I'd like to take you to lunch sometime. Get to know my niece without Helen's filter. Cousin Jennifer hugged me tightly. I'm so sorry. You deserve better from all of us. One by one, family members approached, some with apologies, some with promises, all with varying degrees of sincerity. I accepted what felt genuine and mentally filed away what felt performative. Dad stayed beside me the entire time, a protective presence I'd never experienced before. When I swayed slightly, overwhelmed, he guided me to a chair and brought me water. Thank you, I whispered. I'm 20 years too late, he replied gruffly. But I'll spend the rest of my life making it up to you if you'll let me. I squeezed his hand. Deal. Grandpa produced the birthday cake, an elaborate chocolate creation that suddenly seemed absurd given everything that had transpired. But Grandma Anna insisted on normalcy, on reclaiming the celebration from Helen's chaos. As we sang Happy Birthday and Grandpa blew out his candles, I caught him watching me with an expression of fierce protectiveness. What did you wish for? I asked later, when things had quieted down. He smiled. That my granddaughter would finally understand her worth. Seems like that wish is already coming true. He turned back to me. Natalie, there's one more thing in this folder. He withdrew a check and handed it to me. I looked at the amount and felt my knees buckle. $235,000. That's what remains of the graduate school fund after Paula's theft, Grandpa explained. The original amount was $250,000. With interest over the years, it should have been closer to $280,000, but after Helen's unauthorized withdrawal, This is what's left. It's being released to you now, directly, with no possibility of Helen intercepting it. Use it for your master's degree in architecture. Use it for a down payment on a home. Use it for whatever you want. It's yours. I couldn't speak. Couldn't breathe. Additionally, Grandma Anna added, we're establishing a direct relationship with you moving forward. No more information filtered through Helen. You'll have our phone numbers, our email addresses, and a standing invitation to Sunday dinners. Just you and your father. Mom found her voice again. You're cutting me off from my own parents. Over a car? Over systematic financial abuse. Grandpa corrected, his voice resonating with authority. Over theft, fraud, favoritism, and emotional manipulation. Over destroying your daughter's trust and stealing years of her financial stability. A car is merely the catalyst that brought everything to light. He looked around the room at the assembled relatives, cousins, uncles, aunts who'd witnessed everything. Everyone here is complicit to some degree. Some of you borrowed money meant for Natalie. Some of you watched Helen's favoritism and said nothing. Some of you actively encouraged it. The shame on their faces was almost physical. Here's my final statement. Grandpa continued. Anna and I are revising our estate plans. Moving forward, inheritances will be merit-based and contingent on behavior. Those who demonstrate integrity, work ethic, and genuine family values will be rewarded. Those who demonstrate the opposite will find themselves with very different outcomes than they anticipated. Additionally, I'm establishing a separate trust fund specifically for Natalie, $300,000 that will be managed independently to ensure her financial security while she pursues her education and career. This is separate from the graduate school fund and will provide supplemental income as needed. The threat hung in the air like a storm cloud. Olivia grabbed Mom's arm. Fix this. Do something. But Mom looked broken, her carefully constructed world collapsing around her. She'd been so certain of her parents' unconditional support that she'd never considered consequences. Grandpa walked over to me and placed his hand on my shoulder. Natalie, I'm sorry we didn't see this sooner, but I promise you it stops today. You deserve better than being your family's automatic sacrifice. The tears I'd been holding back finally fell. Not from sadness, but from overwhelming relief. Someone finally saw. Someone finally acted. Thank you, I whispered. Dad crossed the room and pulled me into a hug. I'm sorry, sweetheart. I should have been stronger. I should have protected you. We'll figure it out, I told him. As we stood there, Olivia and Mom huddled together near the doorway, their alliance suddenly brittle without Grandpa's financial backing. Carter looked like he wanted to sink through the floor. Aunt Paula had already slipped out, presumably before Grandpa could reveal any more of her transgressions. The party was effectively over, but I didn't care. Grandpa handed me a business card. This is my attorney, Richard Chin. He's expecting your call Monday morning. He'll handle the vehicle title restoration, the repayment plan enforcement, and any other legal matters that arise. Everything is already prepared. We just needed your confirmation that Helen had indeed committed fraud. You've been planning this for months, I said, awed by the thoroughness. We've been preparing for the moment you'd finally speak truth, Grandma Anna corrected. We knew it would come. We just needed to be ready to act decisively. One of my cousins, Jennifer, who'd been watching from the periphery, approached hesitantly. Natalie, I'm sorry. I should have said something when Aunt Helen took your laptop. I knew it was wrong. Others began murmuring similar apologies. Not everyone, but enough that I realized the family hadn't been as unified in Mom's favoritism as I believed. They'd just been too afraid to challenge her. Moving forward, Grandpa announced to the room, his voice clear and firm. This family will operate on principles of equity, honesty, and mutual respect. Anyone uncomfortable with those terms is welcome to limit their involvement. The message was clear. Adapt or face exclusion. As the party dispersed, people leaving in awkward clusters, Grandpa pulled me aside once more. There's something else you should know. The Range Rover has a tracker, a standard feature we installed for safety. Would you like to know where it's been for the past 3 months? I nodded, curiosity overcoming exhaustion. He showed me his phone. The tracking data revealed something astonishing. The SUV had been to a country club, a spa, a luxury shopping district, and various restaurants, but it had never been to Sophie's school, not once. Dylan's preschool pickup location appeared a handful of times, but mostly the vehicle served Olivia's social calendar. Olivia lied about needing it for the children, I said slowly, the full scope of the deception dawning on me. Comprehensively, Grandpa confirmed. Sophie and Dylan attend the elementary school 6 blocks from their house. They walk with neighborhood friends most days. Olivia wanted your vehicle for status, not safety. The final piece clicked into place. Everything had been about appearances. Olivia's image as the successful younger sister. Mom's role as the matriarch who could redistribute resources at will. The family mythology that I was simply more capable of handling hardship. Why did they think they could get away with this? I asked, my voice raw. Grandpa's expression turned sad. Because you're kind, Natalie. Because you've been trained your entire life to accommodate, to yield, to sacrifice. They mistook your kindness for weakness. Your generosity for unlimited tolerance. But I'm done sacrificing, I said, surprising myself with a new firmness in my voice. Good. Grandpa smiled. It's time you started living for yourself. Dad drove me home that night in his sedan. We didn't talk much, both processing everything. When we arrived at my apartment, he handed me an envelope. What's this? I asked. Letters, he said. I wrote you one every year on your birthday, explaining things I was too afraid to say out loud. About how proud I am. About how sorry I am. About how I should have stopped Helen long ago. My throat tightened. Dad read them later. But know that I'm done being a coward. I'm done letting the women I love be hurt because I'm afraid of confrontation. Grandpa offered me an escape and I'm taking it. I hope you can forgive me for not finding it sooner. I forgive you, I said honestly. We both got lost, but we're finding our way back. 3 weeks later, Olivia returned the Range Rover. Carter pulled up in my apartment complex parking lot, left the keys in the cup holder, and drove away in their BMW without a word. The vehicle was clean, fully fueled, and the title was properly restored in my name. Mom deposited the first installment of repayment, $10,000. Grandpa's attorney confirmed she'd signed an agreement for the remaining balance, with monthly payments automatically deducted from her trust fund distributions. Dad moved into his new condo and invited me for dinner. We cooked together, talked honestly, and began building something that resembled a genuine relationship. The Morrison Project partner called me back. With reliable transportation restored, I could accept their offer. The project would be my biggest yet, a sustainable community center that could transform my career. Grandma Anna and I started meeting for coffee every Saturday morning. She told me stories about her own youth, about learning to stand up to people who saw kindness as vulnerability. The strongest people, she said during one conversation, are those who choose kindness even when they've been hurt. But strength also means knowing when to stop giving pieces of yourself away. I framed that wisdom in my mind. For months after Grandpa's intervention, I ran into Olivia at a grocery store. She looked tired, her designer clothes replaced with practical Target basics. She saw me, hesitated, then approached. The Birkins sold for $18,000, she said without preamble. Carter got a real job. We're managing. That's good, I replied, meaning it. I'm sorry, she added quietly. I didn't realize how much I'd taken until it was all gone. I thought, she trailed off. I thought you'd always just give me things. I thought that was normal. It wasn't normal. It was exploitation. She flinched but nodded. Yeah, it was. She paused. Sophie asks about you. She misses her aunt. My niece. I'd barely seen her since the birthday confrontation. Tell her I miss her too, I said carefully. Tell her when she's older, if she wants to know her aunt without the drama, my door is open. Olivia's eyes filled with tears. Thank you? I didn't invite her back into my life. Some bridges needed to stay burned, but I could acknowledge that she was learning, changing, possibly becoming someone better than the sister who'd stolen from me. Maybe that was enough. I drove home in my Range Rover, the vehicle that had catalyzed everything. As I parked, I thought about how one moment of truth, Grandpa asking a simple question, had unraveled years of manipulation. Sometimes the bravest thing you can do is simply answer honestly when someone asks, "What happened?" Sometimes the people who love you are just waiting for permission to fight on your behalf. Sometimes saying no is the most powerful form of self-love. I walked into my apartment where Dad was waiting with takeout and design sketches for my Morrison project. Grandpa and Grandma were coming over later to celebrate my graduate school acceptance. The letter had arrived that morning. My phone buzzed. A text from Richard Chin, Grandpa's attorney. Final repayment received. Helen's obligation fulfilled. Congratulations. I smiled. The life I'd been living, the one where I automatically diminished myself to make others comfortable, was over. The life I was building, the one where my worth wasn't determined by how much I could sacrifice, was just beginning. And I was ready. Sometimes the people who hurt us most are those who should protect us. But healing begins the moment someone sees your truth and refuses to let injustice continue. Your worth isn't measured by what you surrender. It's measured by what you stand for. Choose yourself, even when it feels impossible. Choose honesty, even when silence seems easier. Choose boundaries, even when guilt whispers you're being selfish, because you deserve advocates who fight for you. And sometimes the first advocate must be yourself. The greatest inheritance isn't money. It's the courage to demand the respect you've always deserved.